Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with Peru-born Brooklyn jazz bassist Jorge Roeder. We caught up with him on April 8th, 2020 to talk about his latest 2020 CD, El Suelo Mío. He was born and raised in Lima, Peru, and has been living in the United States for nearly 2 decades. Over the years, he has been a long-standing collaborator of guitar star Julian Lage and has worked with avant-garde maestro John Zorn. He's got a great tale to tell. Enjoy. Talk to me a little bit about growing up in Peru and how jazz became the way that you were going to live your life.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's very little jazz in Peru, and when I was growing up, it was almost non-existent. It was, like parts of other countries that you get to hear every now and then, that you get to hear about. When people travel to Europe, they bring, chocolates, or they bring liqueur, my family is like, oh, this is, this amazing, whiskey that we brought. And so we regarded a lot of like foreign culture with some sort of respect. Jazz was, even though it was more present than I thought, I never really, when I was growing up, I never really expected that would become a thing that I do until I was learning music, and someone told me, like, if you really want to get good at what you're doing, playing bass, I was playing electric bass, I was playing rock, and I was playing cello, and I was playing classical music, you really need to learn jazz. And so this person showed me, some fusion bass, and I was, incredibly, very wowed by it. And that's when I realized, like, oh, this is jazz. And, I started little by little discovering that there was this world of really complex music. And as I decided then, and when I was 18, I decided to switch to the double bass, but mostly for classical music. I was getting into orchestral music. Someone told me, hey, there's a student big band that needs a double bass player. You want to try it out? And I was like, well, I checked out jazz on the electric, and I was very much into Jaco Pastorius at the time. I was like, yeah, he's, I think this could be good for me. So I signed up for this student big band, and I started playing. And the conductor of this big band was a guy that had lived in the U.S. and had, the trumpet player. He knew, a lot about jazz, and he showed us Kind of Blue, the record. And he said, like, well, we have a concert on for now. We need to learn these songs, and we need to play them. Even though it was a big band, we kind of got split into smaller groups that would play like different songs from the record. But there were only 2 bass players and 2 drummers, so I basically played half of the album. And just learning those songs really showed me that was what I really wanted to do, So that's when I realized that jazz was the thing for me.
I was wanting to know, you've had the chance to play with some pretty heavy hitters like Gary Burton, Ellis Klein, Kenny Werner, and John Zorn. What have you learned from the legends and luminaries in jazz?
Well, everyone has, of the people you mentioned, they all have a vast amount of knowledge, and they have applied it to their musical life, their musical path in a different way. So for me, the biggest takeaway has been that there's no one way of doing things. There's no one way of approaching art. There's no one way of going through your artistic endeavors. And it's up to you to decide what's right and what's wrong. I've taken so much from each one of their approaches without really thinking, oh, this is the one way of doing it, or this is wrong. There's nothing of what they've done I felt it being like counterproductive. Everything has been inspiring from them. Not even if I don't necessarily embrace all of the ideas from all of them, it is very inspiring to be around all of them, because they have committed to their ideas so strongly, and I can see on stage how it shows, and I'm inspired and want to embrace the things that I feel like resonate with me.
Anytime anybody comes into America, it's always obviously going to have some level of growing pains and culture shock. What was it like when you came to America and decided this is where you wanted to stay?
Say, for example, take the language part of it. I started learning English when I was 3 years old. My mom was an English school teacher, and I thought I was fairly prepared, but turns out I wasn't. Speech was a part that I didn't really practice when even when I was in elementary, middle school, high school. In Peru, I did not really practice speaking. So that was even though I knew the theory, it was a difficult thing to clear, like the speaking part of it. And when I got to the U.S., I went to Boston to the New England Conservatory. I had good-natured friends that kept correcting me when I would say something wrong. There was a teacher. I remember saying something about an electric staircase, and people were saying, "What? Like, you mean an escalator?" And they laughed, because the direct translation of escalator is electric staircase in Spanish. So I said that, so I had those kinds of growing pains. Culturally, for sure, it was a little different. Luckily, I had family in Boston. I was able to stay with my sister when I was there. So she definitely eased in the transition, and I was reading a lot of books in English, so I was kind of getting acquainted with the culture. There were some things that I was having hard time to understand my first years at NEC, like how there was this whole attitude, and there was like some students that were incredibly jaded and sarcastic, and a lot of sarcasm I didn't understand at first, and it took me a second, but now I feel I get it.
Yeah, so along those same lines, what was the first live jazz show you saw in the States that blew your doors down?
Before I moved, I took a trip with this big band. This was in the year 2000, and I came to the U.S. We did a van tour from Florida all the way to New York, performing in high school gymnasiums with this big band. And when we got to New York, we attended the IAJE conference, the now defunct IAJE. Back then, I have to say that was the most impressive thing I had ever seen in the world of jazz. I think it's still hard to top. I mean, especially for, like a 20, 21-year-old kid who's trying to play bass. The first show I saw, I remember, completely blew my mind. It was the Dave Holland Quintet. That happened the night we arrived, and I got to see Dave Holland with the quintet. And I remember they had a new drummer, Nate Smith, and boy, he was so amazing. I mean, I remember being like, I was in the back of the hall, and I remember hearing a solo by Nate, and I was like up against the back wall, like not being able to move from that wall of sound. So that was incredible. I saw this show, and right after I saw John Petitucci's quartet, with Horacio El Negro Hernandez. Like I saw Avishai Cohen, the bass player, giving a master class and playing a duo with Jeff Ballard. So like from not seeing anything live before to seeing all these shows, it was quite an amazing impression, and a really, really, really positive one.
Very cool. So talk to me a little bit about what do you like best about being a musician?
More pointedly, about being an improviser. I feel like there's an element of myself, or the way I like to approach life, that I don't like to repeat myself. And this is the thing about jazz that that really caught my attention. I was playing rock, I was playing hard rock with a band in Peru, and I was playing classical music. I was playing orchestral repertoire with a symphony orchestra. I was in the bass section, and as much as I love both, the more I played the same music, I realized that I got bored with it. I wasn't as excited to perform it as I was at first. So that kind of like honeymoon period with a piece kind of would dwindle. And when I discovered jazz, I realized that nothing would have to repeat itself. This is what the impression I got at the time, and it really helped me, and it propelled me towards jazz immediately. I was very excited. Now I realize as the years have gone by, like now practically 20 years later, I realize that that's still possible, but it's still possible for me to get bored or to play the same song. It's not that jazz is a magic antidote to it, but I have the ability of making things different when I play a jazz concert. I feel like a lot of concerts of bands of different styles are forced to play the same music, even in jazz. You know, even if the solos are always going to be different, the forms are the same. But with the bands that I play with, I am blessed and happy to say that that is not the case. Music changes all the time, and we encourage the music to change all the time. And that gives it a fresh feeling that keeps me excited as if it was the first time. And I always felt that that's a really important thing when I play music. Never to feel like I'm kind of giving you a joke that I've already heard that I'm laughing to again. The fresh feeling is the most important part for me. So I luckily have been able to keep that with the bands that I play.
Very nice. So let me ask you this. You know, once the music starts back up, which will eventually happen, what do you hope both the musician and the audience member gleans from this time, and maybe a revelation they have when they come back to get back to live music again?
Well, that's, it's a really interesting question. I feel like there's going to be, this is like pulling on the rubber band, stretching, like when you release how much, how powerful is that going to be? I think it's going to be really powerful. I know for me, I cannot wait. I'm almost dreaming about the time that I'm back on stage and I'm able to play with people in a live setting. It's a feeling that I now I'm craving, and I'm only hoping that it's not going to become almost fetishized, that it doesn't feel like something that it's not, that it's built up to be something more than what it is. It's something amazing, of course, but I don't want to disturb that feeling that I have of joy, connection. I don't want to build it up too much because I feel like that could potentially lead to disappointment. Imagine me building this feeling up and then realizing, oh, it's like the way it was before. But that build-up that I had before would lead to me being disappointed. So I, like with many things in life, I like to hold my horses, and as excited as I am to go back to playing, I need to kind of keep a cool head. I think we all should. And once we get back to the joy with our head down. You know.
I'm just going to ask you one more question, and everyone has a perception of you, your family, your friends, your fans, but you're living your life. Who do you think you are?
I am a normal guy who's trying to play music. In a way, I see myself as a soldier, not in the military way, but more of like someone that follows his path and reacts to the world around them. I've never seen myself. The reason I say soldier is not like necessarily a commander. You know, I follow people that have this leader mentality, and I compliment them. But I try to keep the things I do, the artistic things I do, at an arm's length. That is a big lesson I got from Gary Burton. He kind of gave me, in a way, without saying it, gave me permission to not feel like I had to be, that I had to love music to death and listen to it all the time, that I could keep my distance with music, and that could be a healthy thing for me. So I like being a family man, when I'm away from music. I like to be with my wife and daughter. And then when it's time to go out, I really love playing for people. I like having those things separate, not to, I'm not a house party kind of person that has to, play music all the time, like have people over and play at their house. I like to keep my personal life separate from my performing life. So I guess that's a pretty decent self-description.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, you did great. That's a wonderful answer. And hey, man, thank you for taking some time out today. It's probably one of the most unique times we'll all of us collectively ever spend in our lives. So thanks for talking about the music and what's going on, man.
For sure. Thanks so much, Joe.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in Peru, Brooklyn, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. Thanks to Jorge for his time, music, and stories. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino in the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com. And for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.